John Howard's budget this year was a truly big spending affair. The effect of revisions of estimates of revenue from December last year to May this year for the next 3 years is about $47 billion. So in other words, the government's calculations about how much they have to spend in May this year were $47 billion more for the next 3 years than the same calculations only 6 months ago. And in effect, they've spent a lot, they've used a lot. Some of it on tax cuts, which we broadly support, and a lot of it on new spending. Now, some of that new spending is good, some of it involves ideas that Labor put forward, and there's been a lot of fanfare about education, and we think that some of the education initiatives, though long overdue, are quite reasonable. But they're really just snapshots. They're not the full picture, they're not the whole picture that Australia needs to revolutionise its commitment to education. After starving education of resources, particularly higher education, for a very, very long time, John Howard's latter-day conversion to the cause of learning really makes you wonder about how fair dinkum he is. They've made a lot of a song and dance about their higher education endowment fund, $5 billion that has effectively been taken away from the Future Fund after attacking Labor for proposing to take $2.7 billion worth of Telstra shares from the Future Fund to finance a high-speed broadband network. That $5 billion will, in perpetuity, earn about $300 million a year extra for Australian universities. Now, that's a good thing, but we shouldn't get unduly excited about it. It's not a great thing, because if you divide that $300 million a year up across all of our universities, they only get about $8 million each a year. And the typical major infrastructure project in our universities is $100 million plus. So it's a belated good thing, long overdue, but it's nowhere near as revolutionary or as exciting as John Howard and Peter Costello claim. In overall terms, the budget is still a very profligate, big spending, big taxing affair. Even with the tax cuts, the proportion of our economy that is going in tax, that is going in federal government revenue, will only dip for 1 year. It'll go down for a little while, for 1 year, then it'll be back where it was previously within a year. So the year that's about to finish, the level of taxation in effect will be back at that same level within a year, and 2 years' time the level will actually increase a bit according to Mr. Howard's own budget papers. And similarly with spending, what you can see is over the period of 5 years from the most recently completed financial year through to the end of the budget estimates period, the proportion of our economy that's going in government spending is just steadily increasing, bit by bit by bit. And what's remarkable about that is it's occurring in a period of very, very robust world economic growth and good economic growth in Australia. It's occurring in a period when, if anything, government spending as a proportion of the economy should be reducing a bit. Finally, there is the bizarre innovation in budgeting that the Howard government has perfected of handing out large sums of new spending at the end of a financial year, not at the beginning. Budgets are supposed to be projections about what you're going to spend, what you're going to earn over the forthcoming year. What John Howard and Peter Costello are now doing is getting towards the end of a financial year, discovering the surplus is a lot bigger than they projected, and then handing out a big pile of it in new spending at the end of that financial year, particularly in major handouts to a whole range of different groups. Now, what that means in practice this year is that the new spending for the 2006-2007 financial year that's about to finish is in fact almost as high as the new spending for that financial year announced in last year's budget. It's about $4 billion or so in both cases. So that means that under John Howard and Peter Costello, budgeting is increasingly becoming a retrospective affair rather than a prospective affair that it's supposed to be. It's very reminiscent of the bad old days with public service departments where they'd get to June and discover they had a pile of money left in their budget, and they'd furiously run around spending it on all sorts of mad things to ensure that their allocation wasn't cut for the following year. This is not a sensible way to run a government budget, and it's not a sensible way to run an economy. Labor's alternative budget reply focused not on competing with John Howard about giveaway spendings and all sorts of lollies and goodies for people to try and make them vote for us, because our focus is on the longer term. We criticise the budget for its lack of serious initiatives on climate change, on urban water problems, and on things like vocational education. And the core message of our budget reply was economic responsibility, modesty in new spending, and focusing on a few key issues. One, getting much better vocational education opportunities for our kids in schools through having up-to-date equipment in workshops, whether it's computers or lathes or kitchen equipment, ensuring that kids in our schools are able to develop their early skills in vocational areas on modern first-rate equipment, not something that's 20 years out of date. Secondly, restoring the teaching of Asian languages in schools to give us a better opportunity to integrate with our region. And thirdly, a range of business regulatory initiatives to reduce the impact of regulation and red tape on Australian business, large and small. And fourth and finally, a modest initiative to assist water authorities and local authorities to improve their water infrastructure and plug the vast array of leaky pipes all around Australia that are losing 20-30% of water that we cannot afford to lose. So modest, practical initiatives designed to respond to the big spending affair from John Howard with a measured, sensible approach that says we've got to look to the long term, we've got to worry about where Australia's going to be after the mining boom finishes, and we've got to focus on productivity, not on giveaways that are designed to win votes in the election in 6 months' time.